We laugh a lot.
Ready, set, go. We are live, Ashley, Meehan.
All right. Sounds good.
Welcome to the podcast. It's raining out, so anybody that's tuning in live on Facebook, please bear with us if the video may drop or lag or any of that good stuff. Ashley, you were one of the first people to message our Facebook page directly. It was sometime last year, and you were like very like curious. You were like, "What is this? And what are you guys doing? Tell me about it." Very kind of like direct, but not like confrontational. And we had like a brief conversation, and we talked about getting you on at some point. And then I totally dropped the ball and never got back to you, like never booked it or made it happen. Like the chaos of the behind the scenes stuff just kind of got away from me, and I never threw out the invite to you. And Jake Cannon came on a few months back, and he gave me a friendly reminder. Then I went and checked out Mountain View.
Jay.
Yeah, he gave me a reminder, and I was like, "Yes, I've talked to Ashley. Why haven't I invited her on?" I think it might have been on air when this happened. I was like, "Why haven't I extended an invite?" And so here we are today.
Here we are.
I just wanted to thank you for your time, for driving over the mountain. As you know, it's a nice hike from Mountain View out this way. What's the town or city that it's?
Weaverville.
That's where you guys are. So it is a bit of a hike to get out here. So welcome.
Thank you.
What is it? Who is Ashley? Right? Like, how did this happen? How did all this come to be where you found yourself from PA by way of Florida to the beautiful town of Asheville or Weaverville, and sitting here at a table with myself talking about recovery?
It's so awesome.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And by the way, thank you. And going through the mountains and through the woods and over the hill, and it was great.
Yeah.
I love North Carolina. It's beautiful, and I'm so grateful to be here and blessed. So thank you for inviting me, for sure.
Every single person that I talk to is like, "You have got to talk to Ashley." She's like, people have heard you speak in various locations, and they're like, "Ashley drops it. Ashley brings it." So
Awesome. I love to hear that. That's inspiring to me. I've been through a lot, and I really just try to be true to myself and, try to deliver a clear, precise message of recovery, wherever I go. It doesn't matter if I'm talking at a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, if I'm talking at a business meeting, if I'm talking in church, if I'm talking here, because recovery is so much more than just sharing your story, right?
yes.
It's literally changing and living your life a different way. So, who is Ashley Meehan? I can answer that so many ways.
And also just to chime in, like that authenticity of like, I talk about this a lot, but that authenticity of like, I'm going to be the same person. I'm going to speak the same way, whether I meet you in the rooms, whether you're sitting here on my podcast, whether I'm walking across campus and somebody stops me and talks to me for a minute. Like, you're going to get the same Steve wherever you bump into me. There's not these different personas or people that may or may not interact with you. You're going to get the same person. It's a solid level of authenticity. And I pride myself on that, regardless of like what the state of mind is or what my emotional state is. Like,
For sure.
got to put all that stuff to the side. I chose a path. I have clearly identified my personal values and the things that are important to me, and I'm going to put those first. And I'm going; those are going to be with me wherever I go.
Well, I mean, the reality is how you treat other people is a direct reflection of your life, right? I mean, I can sit here and, think thoughts to myself positively, but if I go out into the world and I'm mean to people and I treat people terribly, or, I'm one person one way, and then when I get around you, I'm a different way, like, that's only creating misery for myself. right? That's not being true to myself. That's not who I am. That's, coming from an emotional reactive place. It's, that whole reacting instead of responding component, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm human. So, sometimes people make me mad, right? I mean, that's human nature. But I'm not in control of how people make me feel, but I am in control of how I react to that. So I know that you could be having a bad day, right? And you could treat me a certain way. And maybe I take what you say the wrong way, and all of a sudden I'm feeling it, right? But how I react to you could truly impact the rest of your day. So if I'm like, you know what, Stephen, like, don't talk to me like that. Get away from me. You don't deserve to talk to me like that, or I don't deserve this, and then I run away, I mean, how is that resolving anything, right? But if I'm like, I understand what you're going through, or maybe you're going through something. Like, what's up? Is there something I can help you with? I kind of feel like how you talk to me wasn't how you usually talk to me. Is there something going on that I can help you with? You're going to have a totally different outcome versus, attacking, right? I mean, that's how interacting with people are. You have to not adjust to the person you're talking to, like we said, always having that authenticity. Wow, I said that way wrong. But, being able to communicate where you're at, but then also remember that there's two people involved in the conversation. It's not all about you all the time.
But it's so hard to remove yourself, right? And the fact of the matter is that everybody's going through something, right? We're all walking this world of life together, and you don't know where you catch people, and you hit on like treating people the way that you would like to be treated. However, our emotions and things like that can often get the best of us. And one of the things that is so important to understand is that, and recognize, is that that's just human nature. And like that kind of stuff will happen. And the monumental part is to recognize it, right? And to catch it, even if it's after the fact, just to recognize that, hey, my emotions got the best of me in that interaction, or hey, my emotions got the best of me today. How can I resolve that, right? How can I do that? How could I have handled that situation better the next time? Everybody's going through something, right? And the more you can do that, the better. It's a skill that you develop, right? And the more that you can do that, the better skilled you become at addressing these uncomfortable situations. I was driving to work yesterday morning, and I had left my big coffee mug at work the day before, something I never do. And I was driving, so I had to stop and get coffee on the way to work. And I was driving to work, and I literally was like a mile from my job. I was pulling in to grab some coffee, and my car died. My car just like shut off. I got to be there in 30 minutes. I have to have the store open. I work a little retail job downtown, little department store, old school deal. And I'm the manager on duty. I got the keys to the store in my pocket. I'm like a mile away. My car just died, right? And like for just a brief moment, I was just like, fuck, right?
Worst
but
nightmare.
then for a second, I was just like, well, you know what? Like, it's not a big deal. Like, you can figure all this out. I popped the hood, and come to find out, it just looks like my battery terminal is kind of like busted, and I need to buy a new one. I took this nice water bottle, and I just kind of beat on it a little bit, and the car fired right up.
That's
and so
great.
like on my list of things to do is obviously to get a new battery terminal in the next like 24 hours and get that thing fixed. But like 5 years ago, that would have been the end of the world, right? 5 years ago, I would have gone inside the store, been an asshole to the guy at the counter for no reason. He wouldn't have deserved it. Then I would have figured out how to get to work, hitched a ride or walk down there, and been a complete dick the whole rest of the day because something happened to me, right? Something that's totally normal, something that's totally natural, something that happens to people every single day of the week, right? But why me? Why me today on this beautiful Sunday morning? Why do I have to work when it's 65 degrees out and sunny and all my friends are out playing in the trail and playing at the lake and I'm stuck at work? And it would just like create this catapult of bullshit that's not even true.
For sure.
And I would have believed all of it, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think like in a situation like that, you can also look at the other side of it. Like something happened that caused you to, stop, right? What if your battery didn't die or you had your bug that day and all of a sudden you're driving down the road and an accident happens? To me, I feel like you can look at the problem or you can look at the solution. So yeah, I mean, is it a shitty day? I'm sorry, I'm going to call it what it is. Sounds like a shitty start to the day, right? But it's all in your outlook and your perspective on how you view it. Because you can also be very grateful that, you know what? Number one, your battery worked again. Like, I've never heard that before. I don't know if anyone has, but tap, tap, all of a sudden my car works. But hey, I mean, that's awesome, right? But, that situation might have saved your life, and you might not have even known that. Or you might have saved someone else's. What happens if you were distracted, you got this coffee, all of a sudden you put it in your, your little cup holder in your car, and oh shoot, like it's just a little too full and it spills, and you look down and you're trying to wipe this, and oh my gosh, there's an accident out of nowhere. Yeah. Like it's things like that. And I feel like we spend a lot of time looking at, oh shit, my day could have been better, or oh, this could have happened, or why did this happen, instead of being like, you know what? Like, this happened for a reason. And I'm grateful that even though it happened, you know what? I have a job that I can show up to. I have a car that got me from A to B, right? You can have money to buy coffee, and if you don't have coffee, you're not going to die, and everything's going to be okay. I mean, to me, that's still a pretty good day.
Yeah, for real. You're totally right. I like how when you get fired up, the PA comes out.
Oh yeah, and the talking, like it happens.
And the hands.
Yeah, that's the Italian thing, though. But
how'd you end up in the mountains?
So, well, I born and raised in Pennsylvania. Lived there till I would say about 20 years old. I'm in recovery, so I did a lot of drugs in Pennsylvania and had a lot of negative acquaintances, and I really needed to make a move. If I didn't, I was definitely going to die. And that's all I'm really going to say about that, because, I mean, the reality is if you do drugs and you do them long enough, you won't survive it. And that's the path that I was heading. So I did relocate to Florida, and, I took me with me. Let me just say that. I definitely continued to do what I was doing in Pennsylvania and Florida. So Florida did not cure me. It was definitely nicer down there, so it was easier to do what I was doing, and things were more accessible. But my family put a bottom line down for me, and they cut me off, and truly they saved my life. And that's how I got to Florida. And I lived there for about 8 years, and I met my husband. And
badass, by the way.
Yeah, I love him. He's goofy, he's smart, he's loving, he's
hilarious.
Yeah.
He cracks me up.
He is. And he's from New York, which is even better. I mean, he has that like New York twang,
All right. I got 2 questions.
Sure.
Jets or Giants?
He's a Giants, but I'm not.
Yankees, Mets?
Mets.
Okay. I can handle that.
I mean, look, I'm okay with Giants, but I'm not okay with the Mets, because if you're going to have the Giants, we need the Phillies. It's just the right thing, You can't have them both. It's just not fair. Funny story, actually, because one of my best friends from Florida got a blanket made for our son when he was born. Her name's Samantha. And she got his name on a half Giants, half Eagles blanket. Okay? Oh, my God. You would have thought that the world was ending.
Eric flipped out.
Eric flipped. He was like, he's not sleeping with that blanket. I'm like, he's 3 months old.
Yes.
He's not going to remember, but just chill. But yeah, you know how New Yorkers are.
It's not the remembering, it's the influence. You can't have that kind of influence on my child.
It was really funny. And of course, my mom bought him an Eagles sweatshirt from like the stadium, and one day Eric wasn't home, so I was like, I'm gonna put it on him. He's never gonna know. I'm gonna start it while he's young, Would you believe it? I put it on him, and it had that stupid little security tag thing on it.
Oh, yeah,
He
yeah.
couldn't even wear it. I was like, this is bullshit. Excuse my language. I'm sorry,
You
but
can say anything you want.
but so he won on that one. I think he's up a tab right now, but yeah. So that's kind of my journey in Florida. I built my career in Florida. I went back to school in Florida several times, and
You found recovery first in Florida.
yes, I did. I found recovery in Florida in 2012.
What was that defining moment that led you to that?
Well, actually, somebody said to me a long time ago that your bottom is when you choose to stop digging. And I felt like that was really powerful because personally, I wasn't going to stop digging. Like, I had to be 6 feet under to stop me. So being able to choose my bottom brought some relief to me. And the last time that I didn't lose anything. I'm just being honest. I was in a car driving home from work with this girl, and she was passing a joint around the car. I think I had like 90 days clean at that time. And, I had met some really good people in recovery, and somebody opened their home to me. I love her to death. She's like an angel. And I really didn't have a reason to use, you know what I mean? And I couldn't think of an excuse to use, yet I still was like, hey, can I hit that?
Yeah.
You
hadn't acquired the skills on how to.
No. And it was so instant. Like, I had no plan whatsoever to hit that joint or to get high that day, or ever really, but it just happened. And, I remember hitting it, and I only hit it like 3 times, but instantly I wanted to die. I hated myself. I was so disappointed. The self-hatred just came flooding in, and I was just like, I can't believe I did this to myself. Like, I literally just risked everything that, gives me a bed to sleep at night, Like, the lady that I was living with was in recovery for 10 years. So she could have easily, like, when I came home, been like, you're high, get out of my house, you're homeless in Florida yet again. Eric put a hard line down on me and told me, if you use again, you can't be in my life. I had a lot of, like, good support that they just were not going to co-sign my bullshit. My family, like, to let them down again. I at that point, I wasn't even developing a relationship with them again, because I had hurt them so many times and made so many false promises.
So having gone through that, having gone through these hard lines in the sand and kind of heavy boundaries, right, from your family and stuff, like, having personally experienced that, and looking back on that now and working in the field and working with clients and probably families and stuff like that, like, what is the most appropriate way to approach and love on and compassionately meet a loved one who is experiencing that extreme suffering that's caused by addiction? Because there's, like, you go on social media, talk to different people, you're going to get 1,000 different things, right? People telling you what to do and how to cut them off, tough love, this and that. Like, how do you meet somebody with a compassionate boundary?
I'm really glad that you asked this, and, the first thing I want to say is there's absolutely no one way, right? There's no.
Just like recovery. Yeah.
Right. And you're dealing not only with the individual, but the family. So, I always talk when I've ran groups previously on codependency, and you have to remember that codependency is not just about the individual that's struggling. It's more or less about the person on the other side. So it takes 2 to tango, right? Wherever there's codependency, there's always 2 sides to it. So, or 3 sides, or, it's not one-sided. So.
And that's just relationally in general. Like,
Exactly.
Anywhere, yeah.
Exactly. So I'll give you an example. I met this gentleman who, 45 years old, older gentleman, smoked marijuana for many years. Previously, as a young adult, did harder drugs, but grew up, and started using marijuana and, just playing video games all day. But, he was stuck in his social life. And, I had him in a group one time, and I kept asking him, what's your goal in life? Like, what's your goal? Because you could really live with smoking marijuana and playing video games the rest of your life.
The consequences aren't extreme enough to,
Excuse me, you could. Exactly. And, he kept giving answers. Finally, he said to me, well, I want to be happy. So I said, okay, you want to be happy? Are you happy smoking marijuana every day and playing video games?
Some people are, right?
Some people are. And that would have led me, prompted me to the next part. But he said no, and I said, okay, so if you're not happy doing that, you have to do something different. And one of his biggest barriers was his family had always been financially supportive of him. So they're paying his rent, if he lives over here, they're paying that. He has barely held a job. He has absolutely no consequences. And he knows, like, okay, well, if I get kicked out of this place, I can just go somewhere else, right?
No pressure.
Right. And he's not doing heroin or crack or everything that, people believe will kill you, yet he's still stuck, okay? And that's what it boils down to. And it's not about me measuring your level of stuck or my level of stuck, right? It's about him leveling his level of happiness, right? I mean, bottom line is, are you happy? And if you're not, then you have to do something different because what you're doing is not working. And, what I told him was, look, do I think you should go to your parents and say, cut me off completely and leave me homeless in the middle of the street so I have nowhere to live and then I have a consequence? No, absolutely not. But do I think you need to write up a contract for yourself and then present it to them so both parties are involved and say, okay, Mom, maybe you could pay for my rent for a month, right? That'll give me enough time to practice interviewing for a job, to put my resume out there, to have a deadline, right? Where I know in a month, like, my funding's cut off, so I need to do the work to possibly get a job to be able to start self-supporting and, just go that route. So, everybody's different, but the thing about addiction is it's a family disease. So, the individual usually is high on drugs, right? So it affects the family almost more intensely because they're watching their loved one kill themselves. So, there needs to be therapy all around, is what I'm alluding to. It can't be a one-person show. I can't go to treatment and get better and then go home and expect everybody to be better because Ashley's better. Like, people need to be educated and learn about it so they can get better too, because I hurt them, right? I mean, I damaged a lot of people in active addiction, especially my family. People who are addicted to drugs and alcohol tend to steal, manipulate, lie, cheat. I mean, whatever, their reality is distorted. So, to expect them to all of a sudden become compassionate, loving, open, honest, transparent individuals after 30 days or 60 days, or really I'm just going to be raw, like after 6 months. I mean, it takes time to get there. And, time takes time. So, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, I don't know what it takes. But I know for me, in my life, there has been different times, even in my recovery, where I realized I was complacent and I needed to do something different to get out of my own way. Because if I'm stuck, I'm stuck.
I've been there. Yeah, I've been there. What was that process like for you in regaining some of that trust from your loved ones? Like, how did that, because again, it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're ready and they're not, or they're ready and you're not. Like, how do you walk that path of forgiveness, that path of redemption? What type of effects did that have on both you and the family?
Yeah, so it's funny because every time I talk about my family, you'll see my whole demeanor changes, my physical condition changes. But, I love my family, and I know my family loves me. I have a wonderful family, and, growing up in Pennsylvania, I have 2 brothers. I have 2 stepbrothers, a stepsister, a mom, a stepdad, a stepmom, a dad. So I have a pretty big family, and lots of aunts and uncles and cousins and so on.
That's the Italian.
Yeah. Yeah. But although my dad's not Italian, he's Polish, mixed, mutt. I'm not sure, but he's got a big family too. So I don't know. But, it was hard. I did not get everything back overnight. In fact, some things that are really hard for me to have truth about, I still don't have back, over 7 years later. I did a lot of damage in a very short period of time. And, the thing about recovery or the program, I guess I should say, the only promise is freedom from active addiction. Doesn't promise you that, your mom's going to forgive you for everything that you've done, or you're going to get your children back, or, you're going to grow up and get a college education and live in this big home. Like, you need to do the work to do that, right? And sometimes it's not possible. So, one of the things that I tried to do this time around was I really tried, because I said I'm sorry so many times. I can't even count how many times I looked at my mother, and my mother's like, "Are you okay? Like, do you need help?" And I'm just like, "No, I'm fine." Really, I was dying inside. And then when I finally, went to treatment, I'd be like, "I'm sorry." And she would just be like, "I don't even know how many times you've told me that. Like, it means nothing anymore." And
Devalued the word.
for sure. And when I finally started looking at what I was doing to other people and not just myself, I was able to kind of open my eyes a little bit more and pay attention to my own actions and bring awareness to myself, right? So in early recovery, I kind of didn't push too much towards my family because I wanted to prove to them that I was going to change and I was going to do something different. And slowly but surely, I kind of, started talking to them again. But I mean, I hurt a lot of people. And I can remember calling my house and my family being like, "Don't call my house again until you have a year clean. Like, I can't do this anymore, And at the time, I hated them. I was like, "What do you mean? You don't love me. How could you do this to me? Oh, my God," But
Taking things very personally.
yes, it was all about Ashley, right? The self-centered core of this disease. But I realized that they were trying to save my life because they felt like the continuous enabling, was hurting me. And they didn't have to hear that from you, right? Or from another person. They had evidence by my own actions. I taught them that. So they were like, "Okay, we got to do something different, or, Ashley could die."
During that process, right, while you were essentially working to regain their trust through your actions, what type of self-forgiveness work were you doing on? What type, you were talking about like this internal shift and internal changes that you were making. What it sounds like is that you probably needed to do some forgiving of yourself prior to.
For sure. Absolutely. So I did steps, and I'm anybody who knows me, I'm a program girl. I really feel like the solutions are in the steps because I believe that when you learn enough about yourself and you bring that awareness, then you have the ability to be able to change. And the spiritual principles behind the steps, and it's not just about hope, faith, courage, brotherly love, honesty, there's so many more than just one behind the steps. Like, obviously, if you're learning how to surrender, you have to be accepting of who you are, right, and what you're doing. You have to have an open mind to change, right? You have to become willing to change. You have to, be honest about where you're at, and you have to humble yourself that clearly, if you think that you know everything all the time, if I thought that I knew everything all the time, it's time to think different because I'm either going to get the same results and probably die, or I'm going to become willing to change. So, and that alone is about the first step, right? And I feel like, there's not a lot of education when it comes to that. And and this is just my perception, but there's so much more time and energy that could be spent on just those 6 words, right? To learn how to be able to practice that in our lives. And those things would impact my life so much if I just internalize them a little bit more, right? So it was really, in the beginning, it was about doing the opposite of what I was doing. Yeah. Just be the total opposite of crazy Ashley and active addiction.
Try to buy into those spiritual principles and understand them, and then understand how to apply them to your life. So I'm not knowledgeable or versed in any of the 12-step lingo at all. I've been a member of the Refuge Recovery Fellowship since 2014.
Okay.
And what it sounds like, however, like I've talked to many people at the table, but what it sounds like is kind of like what attracted me to the Refuge Recovery model, in the fact that we practice these types of ethical values, I guess you could say, and it's kind of like it's a non-linear path. Like all of those spiritual principles are connected to each other. Like you essentially can't apply or know one without being comfortable with the other, right? Because they're going to influence and they're going to affect each other. You don't just wake up and say, I'm going to be the most humblest bitch on the planet.
Of course. I mean, I wish. Shoot, if we could do that, let me know how.
It's definitely like direct action and a little bit of like wisdom and insight into who you are and what's happening. So at what point along this journey did you decide that Ashley was going to not just be of service for her program, but to go out and work in the fields in South Florida at the time, right? When there was probably some stigma and stuff attached to just the industry itself.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I'm blessed when I got clean. You know, when I put down drugs and alcohol in the lifestyle, Florida wasn't classified the way that it is today.
What year was that?
I got clean 2012, the beginning of 2012. So February 20th, 2012 is my clean date. And, you know, at that time, I mean, I can remember waiting for a bus for 2 hours. It wasn't very populated. You know, I believe, if not like right before, maybe shortly after, was when the whole like pill mill thing started.
It's when it really escalated, yes.
Right. Like within a year, I mean, you're talking about treatment centers popping up on every corner, and all of a sudden heroin was in Florida. That wasn't big when I, you know, was living there, thank God. And I really mean that, and I wholeheartly thank God.
Totally agree with you.
Oh.
I wouldn't be alive today if things were happening.
Oh, me neither. Me neither, you know. And then, you know, I started working in treatment when I had about a year clean, and I started as a tech. And I worked for a pretty large treatment center. There was about 120 patients there at a time, and there was only like 3 or 4 of us on. So, you know, 4 of us kind of managed like 120 people. Of course, we weren't clinicians, we were technicians, and it was fun because I got to hang out with a bunch of addicts and alcoholics. I mean, to me, that's the best job ever. And I learned very quickly that I personally believed that I had a little bit more to give. And I believe that because I invested a little bit more time in people and like got to know them a little bit more, where they were coming to me if they were struggling with something, you know, or if they needed help with something. And I always kept that firm boundary. So that being said, I watched a lot of people come in and work that could not hold boundaries. Yeah. And, you know, you have to know what kind of person you are. And that doesn't mean that the person's a bad person or good person. It just means that, you know, maybe it's not the right fit because sometimes they come from a selfish place, right? Kind of like when you see somebody work in treatment who's attracted to a newcomer. I mean, somebody who walks into the treatment center should feel safe where they are, right? And should not even have to even think about that. So, you know, somebody said to me early on, you know, you should go to school for this. And I was like, no way.
Do you know who you're talking to?
Yeah. I'm not going to school. I tried that 3 times, and, you know, I'm still paying for student loans, but I'm not going to school. And, you know, a friend in recovery reached out to me and said, okay, why don't you start working in admissions? And I was like, what's that? You know, I had no idea. And they're like, well, you can talk to people over the phone the same way you talk to people one-on-one, but you get paid more money. And I'm just being honest, you know, I'm being transparent. And so I checked it out, and I actually took a job working for a treatment center that was transitioning from an eating disorder facility into substance abuse. So there was only 3 of us there. It was a very small admissions department, and we got to do everything from intake to you know, greeting the client, doing tours, to actually admitting them, to insurance, to assessments. So I got to learn a lot of the ins and outs in that, you know, that realm. And, you know, I had a boss at the time who taught me a lot and exposed me to a lot. And really, I mean, I realized that I could do that and go back to school. Like, I found out about the internet. You know, I was like, wait a second, what have I been missing all this time? You mean I can go to school online? I can do this, you know? And I was very blessed because he allowed me, because it was, you know, it was still slow at that time, to do a lot of my schooling while I was working. And pretty much I did that for 2 years. So I did a lot of online classes. I did supervision at another treatment facility. And, then I sat for my international test. And I mean, listen, you want to talk about rewarding? The day I got that, I was like, holy shit, I completed something. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it was really just, it was up from there. And, I think setting those little goals for myself and realizing that I can achieve those things became very important in my life, not just my recovery process, but in my life, realizing that, what, like the only limits and barriers that I have are the ones I put on myself.
Yeah. And then experiencing the results of
Yeah.
knowing that.
Yeah.
And that's a lot to accomplish in a fairly short period of time, 2.5 years ish.
Yeah, for sure. It was. And actually I didn't stop there because I went back to school for billing and coding and I got my certification for that. And I did that whole twist. And honestly, I think I would probably go back to school again. I really believe strongly in educating myself and for people to educate themselves because again, the sky is the limit.
Yeah, the sky's are the limit, and I've talked about this a lot, that, like, I feel like I did, like, so much damage to my brain over the years and, like, a disservice to myself that, like, I'm just fascinated with learning. And it doesn't have to be in the classroom setting. Like, I want to read as many books as I can. I want to listen to as many podcasts as I can. And even, like, doesn't have to be specifically in the field of addiction or in the realm of recovery. Like, I want to learn about, like, just weird stuff that doesn't even matter to anybody.
We were talking about this.
I mean, I listen to just some crazy podcasts throughout the week, and I'm just fascinated with learning. Like, people will ask me, I'll meet somebody new, and they'll be like, what kind of music do you listen to? And I'll just, like, I won't know what to say because, I mean, yeah, I like listen to some tunes every now and then, but, like, I would prefer to learn. Mm-hmm. And that's how I learn well, is through that. And so, like, I think it's a part of, like, growing up. Mm-hmm. That's a polite way of saying of getting old, but it's a part of growing up is that, like, I find value in, like, those sorts of things to continue challenging myself, challenging my brain to, like, because, like, I'll listen to as many podcasts or audiobooks or books as I can, and I'll probably retain about 10% of the information that I set out to learn, Yeah. So at what point did things get, like, shady down there? Were you around for that? Were you in the...
Well, I'm actually lucky because I had really, really good mentors. Excuse me. I have a cold. I'm sorry.
You need a tissue? I got tissues.
No,
somewhere.
I'm totally okay. I think it's just the flare up of the allergies and being in the mountains. But I dodged a lot of that, and I think it's because, like, the path that I was on to, like, be a clinician, to learn more, the mentors that I had were, they were clinicians, they were doctors, they were, supervisors. They weren't these, they weren't people that were making the industry shady, I guess is the best way to put that. Because I don't want to classify a position because I don't think that's right. I do think that there is people who do the right thing out there. And I don't think it's right to judge everybody, right?
Yeah.
So personally, I would say about 2015-ish is when things really started to change. And, you would see these treatment centers with IOPs and people didn't have to pay rent. Let me just tell you something, okay? When I graduated from treatment, or whatever you want to call it, completed treatment, I was not staying in Florida unless I had $200 a week to go to a halfway house. They didn't care about your insurance. They didn't ask what kind of insurance you have. And when they were suspicious, they paid for a drug test and they drug tested you. I went to a place called The Lodge, and it was by the book. Actually, I got kicked out for breaking rules, and I didn't even get high. I just broke the rules. And then it shifted, and people started saying, hey, you can go to my IOP and you can live in this house for free. And, and then there was that whole, like, lab scandal where people were labbing at halfway houses, which is totally illegal in Florida. If it's not illegal here, I don't know why. I'm just going to flat out say that. from a clinical standpoint, I don't know how you can justify doing that when they're not being managed at a level of care. I don't get it, unless the treatment center is the one labbing it. But anyway, that's a outside issue. But yeah, I mean, and then, you saw different people starting to come around. I mean, people who had like 5 months clean, 6 months clean, operations at treatment centers, and you're just like, what is going on? Personally, and this is just my view and my perspective, I don't think anybody should be running a treatment center unless they're educated, and also unless they have several years of recovery.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you have, I don't want to say how you have something to give, because everybody has something to give. But I would say about the first 3-4 years of my recovery, I needed to do a lot of intense healing on my own before I could step into an administrator role and really be a role model, right? A good role model, because how I present myself is ultimately what people are going to see. What kind of person am I, right? And it goes back to what you were saying, because, I used to be the person that listens to and I'm not knocking on people who listen to rap, okay? I'm not going there. But, some dirty, dirty music, right? And now I listen to Jesus music. I'm like, what's going on here? Am I getting old? Like, look at these grays in my hair. Like,
I don't see it
oh, they're there.
I don't see nothing.
Oh, they're there. And, it's just like I'm changing. And I continue to change because I continue to do work on myself, and I continue to find things about myself that I like and things that I don't like, and that I want to change.
Yeah. But you're not doing a true inventory if you're not finding things that you don't like, right?
Right.
It's
I find things every day. Ask my husband.
So, take it back a little bit. With all that stuff going on, couple years clean, working, treatment, admissions, intake, and going to school, right? It's a lot on somebody's plate. What was it like to balance all of that and still stay active in your fellowship and still stay active in your own personal recovery? And how did you find a way to balance that? Because you talked about setting firm boundaries with your clients and stuff. I don't think that that's a natural skill that we possess. I think that that's definitely something that we must learn, develop, practice.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely. I mean, I quit smoking cigarettes the end of 2012, and
share your secrets.
Oof. Listen, I use, honestly, this might sound really cliche, but I swear to you, I use meetings. I walked into meetings, I'm like, I really want to smoke a cigarette, and people are probably like, who the hell is this bitch? Can she just go away and stop talking? But I needed that, and it worked, So
you just cold turkeyed it and shared about it.
I did. But honestly, I did also shift a little bit, and this gets into what you were asking. I was kind of chunky as a teenager, and I hated the mile run at school. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but when they're like, you got to run the mile, I'm like, my ankle's broken. And I always had the 20 minutes when everybody else had the 8 minutes. But so I was like, you know what? I'm going to challenge myself, and I'm going to try running, because I was so bad at it. I was like, maybe I could do that instead of smoke a cigarette. And, because it does a lot. Exercise, releases endorphins. Yeah. And, the first day I think I got on the treadmill, I ran a minute. Second day, 5 minutes.
Progress.
Yeah. By month, 2, I think I was running 4 miles in 45 minutes. And, a lot of people would say, oh, well, that's not that good. You know what? It was pretty damn good from where I came from. And, that kind of became a healthy, corporate, I incorporated that in my recovery, but I also continued to attend meetings and work on myself. So, the first 3-4 years of my recovery, I was still discovering what balance was. And I'm just going to be real raw and honest. Some days I was like, this is a lot. I don't know if I can do this. But I had a cheerleader in my corner, and I had friends that were, strong in recovery who were like, you can do anything you put your mind to. If you stop, that's because you're stopping yourself. And, I just continued on. And, like I said, once I completed school, and I got that letter in the mail, and I was like, wow, this feels good. You know, I was like, okay, all right.
Like one of those sky's the limit moments. Like you
Yeah.
can see it. Yeah.
It's, you know, you like to read. I'm a terrible reader because my brain does something. And I think it's from all the holes in there. But when I start reading after like 15 pages, I doze off. I cannot stay awake.
That's okay. That's a decent pace.
Oh, but I have to listen to it
Try
instead.
try an audiobook. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I totally learn better through audiobooks and through podcasts, but I like to take notes. Mm-hmm. So like I'll typically buy a book on Audible and purchase the Kindle version at the same time. They give you like a discount if you buy them both at the same time. So I'll purchase them both at the same time. So if I hear something that I just have to highlight and note it, then I'll flip over to the Kindle version and document that. Is fitness still a part of your
Oh my gosh,
process
no.
today?
It needs to be. You know, I've kind of been in and out, and, you know, I got married in 2014, and in the end of 2014, we got pregnant. And
we did?
yeah.
Go on.
And I lost that baby a couple months into 2015, and I definitely became very, I don't want to say depressed. It was definitely situational, but it hit me pretty hard. You know, I gained a lot of weight from that, and then I lost it again, and then I got pregnant with my son Connor, and I gained a lot of weight again, and then I lost a lot of weight again. So it's an area that I need to continuously work on. And when I have stress in my life, or when I get distracted by a lot of other things,
Chaos.
yes, it tends to fall by the wayside.
Does
So it does.
So that should be the opposite. When all the chaos is, the storm is rolling in, that should be like the automatic place to turn.
Oh my gosh, I know. But I have such a
Right?
full life. I'm not making excuses.
I know, so
I
do I.
could wake up earlier. Okay, let me just be clear about that. You know,
You like to sleep in,
my son likes to wake me up.
does he?
If I had it my way, I would sleep an extra hour, but
The first like 4 years of recovery, being in the refuge recovery fellowship, and I spent all my time like studying the Dharma, meditating, like studying Buddhist psychology, all mind work and all mind healing. I was an athlete in high school and stuff like that. But all of my effort was put into the internal healing up here. Not a drop of it was in fitness at all. Nothing. And this year, I was like, all right, try to quit smoking. You see, I got my nicotine lozenges right here. And like, try to quit smoking. And it's been very challenging. But I was like, I got to start turning 38 years old this year. I'm like, I got to start taking care of my body the same way that I've learned to take care of my mind. My co-host Caleb's like a ultra marathon runner.
Oh,
like
man.
that's his path
That's awesome.
of recovery, right? This dude is just insane when it comes to that. So like he kind of influenced that a little bit. So I started going to the gym at school. And gosh, let me tell you, it was a very similar experience to you. You know, I'm like, all right, let me run a mile. Okay, maybe I'll just start with a half a mile on my first day. And, you know, but the progress came. But the most important thing that I noticed was that that anxiety and that stress relief and like those things that the benefits that I experienced from just running on the treadmill were almost identical to my meditation practice in a sense that it relieved so many of those things that were bothering me, so many of those things that were on my mind, that now I try to go like 3 to 4 days a week. It's at school,
That's good.
on campus. And now what I really try to do is every Monday before these shows, I try to get over there and just knock out. I'm up to like between 3 and 5 miles now.
That's awesome.
But it's at the same pace, about 9 to 10 minutes. You know,
Yeah.
it ain't a sprint. We're just cruising, listening to a book while we're doing it.
I love
No
that.
music, just books. It really affects my mindset going into these conversations. It allows me to just kind of like wind down.
Mm-hmm.
So like today, I pulled up to the gym. I was at the library working on some assignments. And I was in there for like an hour and a half. I'm like, all right, you got to go work out. You got to go knock out some cardio. Pulled up to the gym, grabbed my gym bag out of the back of my car, and get into the locker room, and I realized that I didn't bring a towel with
Oh,
me.
no. Oh, no.
And it wouldn't be a big deal, but I have to take a shower because I can't come in here all smelly and stuff like that. So I didn't get it in today. But I'm telling you, those
Stupid towel.
those benefits for up here has just been like phenomenal. Like I cannot suggest it and recommend it. And I think that like when you take a step back and you look at traditional, like air quotes, traditional mindsets, traditional pathways, the idea of what people have of recovery, of the rooms and stuff like that, a lot of the language, it does not focus on physical fitness, right? Like you hear a lot about the spiritual practices and various things, but you don't, nobody really places, and you think about like the outsider looking in, you think about like coffee drinkers and smokers,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And nobody's really talking about, not many people are talking about
Health.
the benefits of healthy nutrition, the benefits of exercise and those things. Myself being one of them, you know, but I just think that it's like an important part of this whole personal shift in the way that we live,
For sure.
incorporating those into treatment centers and things like that. When did you guys move up here? What brought you to the mountains? Like of all places in the world, being a girl from PA down to Florida, what led to the mountains?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to say that Florida is way too hot for this girl, okay? There's nothing worse than a girl who likes to wear black pants all the time, that's me, who walks outside in the middle of the summer, 100-degree weather with humidity that is literally so thick you can cut it.
Yeah.
So I knew for a long time that I was not going to live there forever. However, it was serving its purpose. You know, I had a great career down there. I bought a home. My son was in a good school. My husband was happy. You know, I was happy. And, you know, I was happy from the outside, I guess I should say. But there was something missing for sure. I definitely felt like my career at that time consumed me. And I do believe to some extent that I lived a lot for that instead of, you know, living for what really matters in life, your family, you know, yourself, your self-worth, your self-love, having time to exercise, right? And, you know, I met somebody who, and my husband and I had always talked about moving to North Carolina when we retire. Now, we had envisioned
When we retire.
50 years from now, if we're lucky, right? And we had met an individual who connected us to just amazing, beautiful individual, like just some of the best people I've ever met in my life. And I really sincerely mean that. And they own Mountain View Recovery. And I'm not sure if I can say their name because I want to, but I don't want to make it public for them. But these two people are just, they're incredible. And they opened up their arms to me. They're like family, and I love them. And, you know, we met them, and we had no idea, you know, who they were at that time. We were like, okay. We had met a third individual who's not connected to them, but knew them, who said, hey, why don't you come up to North Carolina and check out the mountains and meet, you know, this married couple and, you know, come see this treatment center that I want to open up. So we're like, okay. It was our anniversary weekend. It was November, you know, we got married November 21st. It was literally that weekend. And, you know, he was flying us for free. So we're like, okay, let's check this out. And we moved up here, and I have to tell you, and I wish I could, like, let you feel the experience that I had. But when I walked onto the property of where Mountain View Sober Living is, I felt something instantly.
Had you ever been to the mountains prior to that? Any mountains?
I've been to Utah,
Okay.
so different mountains. I actually rode the Colorado River last year for the year before. for 4 days. That was amazing. That's kind of what prompted this whole life-changing decision to move from a busy career to something more peaceful. I had no idea that was going to be Western North Carolina, but I knew it had to be something. And, I walked into the home, and they were living in this home at that time, and they opened up their home. They cooked us dinner. They loved us. They were good to my child, and they expressed to me why they wanted to open up a treatment center. And, they told me that addiction had affected their family for many years, that they didn't know anything about addiction, that they were forced to learn because of their family members being affected, their own children. And they went to their churches for help, and they didn't know. And one of their sons had attended a treatment center in Florida, and they had a family weekend where they actually taught them, they actually had them fly down there and stay there for the weekend and taught them about the whole family disease.
The thing we were talking about there.
Exactly. Yeah. And they realized like they had to ship their kids to another state for that to happen. And they felt like there was something missing in Western North Carolina, and they knew a lot of people who had struggled or families were affected by addiction, and they didn't feel like the resource was here for them in that way. And I'm not saying there isn't good programs here, because there is good programs here. We started Mountain View and opened up Mountain View because we really wanted to bring that love and affection and let any addict and any alcoholic or, any person seeking recovery know that it is possible. And, we're not a one-way facility. We do have the 12-step immersion, but we believe strongly in finding what works for you, because anything can work, right? I've been witness to that. Even in my recovery, the first 5 years of my recovery was a diehard NA girl. I was in NA meetings 5 times a week, working NA steps. I've done, and I still believe in the program. I'm still an NA girl, okay? But the past 2 years, I started incorporating more other things into my recovery to fulfill me. And what I mean by that is, I started going to church faithfully and participating in church events and feeling as though I'm giving back, not just taking. And I started working on some things, on an individual level. And I started taking piano lessons. And, I started going to Celebrate Recovery because I felt like, I needed more. And this is just me, but I wanted more Jesus. I wanted more of a faith avenue that I felt like Narcotics Anonymous gave me a higher power, but I wanted more of a distinct understanding and guidance towards that, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying that it's not available there, because it is. I'm an NA, so it's available, right? But I wanted more. And so because I wanted more, the good little addict I am, I went out and got it. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. And, I still to this day want more. Yeah. I do. And I talked to you about some things that I've also been working on. And I'm excited to get involved with Buncombe County and the community, and to feel like I'm not just part of the treatment world, but also I can give back to the community on a community engagement level. And I feel like I've been blessed, and I know it's not by my own doing. I just do the next right thing, And then, God puts everything in place for me. And as long as I show up and I do the right thing, and if I hurt people, I say I'm sorry, and I don't be intentional about hurting people. And when I do something wrong, I have the guilt behind it, and I try to change, right? And I continue to be a good role model, not only for my family and for my children, because that's the most important thing for me, but for society, man, for me. I want to be a role model for myself,
Who were your role models?
Oh, I have a lot of role models. I have a lot of angels that came into my life along the way. I refer to them that way, but my mother is a hard-working woman, okay? She definitely was a huge role model for me. She inspired me to be the best that I could be. My father, too, he's overcome a lot He had his own struggles, and I mean, to see where he's at, he's very peaceful. He has found an avenue that works for him that, like, I can't even believe he doesn't, like, you know, I'm Italian, so I still react a little bit, right? Sometimes I have to, like, bring it down a notch. Him, he's just very calm, and everything's okay. And are you sure you want to think like that? Let's think about something different. And, you know, so definitely my parents are key role models in my life. My children, they're so innocent, and they're just so, my sons are literally are the best part of my life. And, you know, my husband is a great father. And I see that, and I'm like, how lucky am I that I was gifted with this man who loves not only me, but is so good to my children. You know, and my older son, he's not his, you know, by blood, but my husband loves him like his own child. And, you know, that says a lot about a man to step in. And, you know, I just, people like that inspire me. And then, you know, I've met some women in recovery, man. This woman, Julia, you know, I got to give a shout out to her because she taught me how to live. And what I mean that, she literally taught me how to live. So I love her like a third mother. I really love this woman, Judy. She's like another mother to me. I swear to you, like, God has blessed me with women to come into my life and act like motherly figures. And you know, I have friends that I've met in recovery that I can truly say are my friends. Like, no matter what, will be there for me. And some of them, you know, still work a program. Some of them do not. They don't use drugs and alcohol, right? But, you know, some of them aren't as involved as, you know, I guess one may say they should be in the program. But you know what? Like, they're there for me. And, you know, when my son was... when Connor was born, he was born with a heart defect. And it was it was definitely the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life. And you learn a lot about people when you go through something like that. And you find out a lot about people. And sometimes people are scared because they don't know how to talk to you, right? They don't know how to be there for you when you're literally watching your son in heart failure who has to have open heart surgery at 4 months old. But then you have people who are super compassionate and go out of their way to make you feel loved. And, you know, that's what it's about. It's about going out of your way to make people feel loved, even when you're having a bad day. Even when you just want to pull the covers over your face, right? And say, I'm done. Like, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'm funky. I don't, you know, because I have those days,
We
right?
all do. Yeah, we all do.
But still, I have a responsibility to go out of my way to make people feel good, because you know what? Making people feel good makes me feel good.
Always. Every time. Every day of the week.
Yep.
Every day of the week. You hit on a couple things that interest me. Number one is the relationships, right? I was asking about mentors, and you just fired off a big long list of people. And what I think about is like an active addiction, right? We have these like relationships that don't have any meaning behind them, or it's like an authentic relationship is so foreign to us. It's not something that we have faith in, believe in. So that process in cultivating these relationships can be challenging at times, right? It's a process that we must learn, and it can be very challenging. And I know, you know, from what I do know of the rooms, like they say, to just like ask somebody or ask for help, stick around behind after a meeting and like reach out. And I almost feel that like, and I don't want to like step on anybody's toes here, but I almost feel that that could potentially be seen as an obligation, right? Like the newcomer stuck around and wants to is looking for some support, looking for some support systems. And so I would personally have some like underlying fear, like, is this person whom I'm trying to form a relationship with, to look for some support, walk each other through this process, are they doing it out of an obligation to the program, or are they authentically my friend? Do they want to be my friend? And I could see some like issues there.
For sure.
And I don't know like how much you want to talk about that, but like, how do we learn to trust another person? How do we learn to cultivate these authentic relationships? I was lucky enough that I have a retail sales background. Since I was like 16 years old, I worked in retail sales. So I was able to develop that skill at an early age because I had to build relationships with my customers. I was in management. I had to develop that trusting relationship with my employees. Though I manipulated the fuck out of both of them, I learned how to develop the relationship, and so I've carried that over into my life in recovery. But for the newcomer, for many newcomers, people don't have that ability, right? It's so foreign. So like, where do we start? How do we essentially trust somebody that wants to support us? And then how do we build those relationships? Because I can see that it's scary.
It is scary. And trust is scary in general because you're giving something to somebody else and relying on them, right? And, I want to say something about, real quick also, somebody that was a mentor to me was my stepdad, because my stepdad, when I was using, he wouldn't even look at me. He knew every time, and I hated him for that, but he pushed me. And then when I, finally surrendered, he was there for me. And, trust is like, first of all, it goes back to what we talked about, like being a two-way street, right? Trust is a two-way street too. And my experience with trust is it's not what you say, it's what you do. So for me, I can go to meetings, I can sound real good, I can meet people that sound real good and they're hanging out with this person and all of a sudden there's a group, right? And I kind of shy away from groups because to me, I feel like if I'm entrusting in somebody, I want to develop that intimacy on an individual basis. And it's not something that I want to process in a group unless everybody in the group I have an intimate relationship with, right? And, I feel like that's something that is a continuous struggle for a lot of people in recovery. And, for me, I do kind of feel like it's a little bit of a gift, to be honest, and I have a really good intuition. So I can, like I said, I can tell a lot about somebody when I pay attention to how they act, because if you tell me you're this, you're such a good friend and you don't talk about anybody behind their back and you don't have judgments and all this stuff, right? But then we go out to eat, right? And then you're talking about the girl in the booth over there that is eating so much and that's how you have a conversation. To me, I'm paying attention to that.
My actions don't fall in line with what I've said.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be somebody we know, right? Because how you present yourself is not always who you are. People show you what they want you to see, not who you really are, right? And sometimes it's scary to be transparent about who you really are. But ultimately, the people that are in your life, the ones that judge don't matter, and the ones that matter don't judge. We talked about that before. For me, I would rather have 2 or 3 people that I can be vulnerable with and call them and be like, listen, I had a really crappy day. I sucked today. This is what I did. Please forgive me. Do you forgive me? Does this make me a bad person? All the crazy stuff that can go on up here, right? I'd rather have that person love me for my mistakes and help me better myself than to be sitting next to me co-signing my bullshit. And I always tell people, a real friend, somebody said to me, how do you define a friend, right? I had to learn how to define what a friend is. And to me, the definition of a friend is somebody who has my best interest all the time, period. People can pretend really good, right? But it goes back to, what are they doing? I mean, there's a lot of untrustworthy people in the rooms. There's also a lot
just in the world.
In the world.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at. There's also a lot of trustworthy people outside of the rooms, right? And, I have met since I've branched out in my recovery to other areas, I mean, my gosh, like I limited myself for so many years and I stayed in a bubble, and that's okay because that's what I needed at that time, right? But now that I've gone outside of that, I have really met some incredible people. And, you know, people do make mistakes. I want to say that. But to me, on a personal level, I need to evaluate how much that mistake impacts me.
And others. Mm-hmm. And people make mistakes, but we're all like trying to figure this thing out too.
Sure.
So like they could be at a different place along this process of growth to where like, you know, obviously we're all proponents of second chances or else we wouldn't be sitting at this table tonight. And so like, yeah, somebody might not behave or act in a way that we approve of, but at the same time, like they're trying to figure this thing out just like we are. Then the question is, how much trust are you okay putting in them, and how do you figure all that out? And I could totally relate to you. Like the first like 3.5 to 4 years, I lived in this refuge recovery bubble, this fixed views, like this shit worked for me, right? I got my life back. I'm in school. I have a healthy relationship. I have a healthy relationship with my entire family, right? Like I have all of these things because of this. So I'm not going to go anywhere outside of it. I'm going to hold on to it as tight as I can. And I'll share it with the people that want it. But if you don't want it, go ahead and fuck off. Cause like this shit worked for me. And like you said, like it only goes so far. And there becomes a time where like, yes, I still find value in everything that I learned from it. And I still go 2 to 3 times a week, and I still try to meditate every single day. But had I not opened myself up to other perspectives, I would have never met so many wonderful people like yourself, the 65 other people that have come and sat in that chair and talked to me, the relationships that have been built through just opening that door right there. You know, I don't have to buy into anything else. Just by opening that door was so damn rewarding.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So like, what has it been like? How has that growth that I just kind of like described, how has that transferred in your life? Like venturing off and becoming more involved in your church, stepping in to celebrate recovery. Like, what was that progression like? What has that progression been like?
So, I mean, it's crazy to me. Like, I thought, you know, recovery took me to a place that that I really didn't even think there was a next level, right? I'm like, okay, this is great. Like, you know, my life is good. Like, I'm happy. Like, I really didn't even know.
I have everything I need right here. It's all good. Yeah.
Right. You know, and then it's like when I started doing things differently, and what I mean by differently is just adding more to the mix, you know, I really didn't have an expectation. I was like, oh, I'm going to check this out, and I'm going to have an open mind. I'm going to see how other people do things, and maybe it could be cool. And if it's not, that's okay, right? Because I had an experience I could add to my bucket list that I did, which was neat. And, you know, I ended up like really enjoying it. And like, you know, I mean, wow, like my mind started to open more and more. And, you know, where I didn't even know I was closed-minded, I started realizing like, oh my gosh, like I've been, again, limiting myself in recovery. Sometimes we don't even realize the barriers that we put on ourselves. It's kind of like, you know, when you meet people and, you know, and I can speak to this too, because I struggle with this too, you know. Judgment is a real thing in this world. Okay, I'm just going to throw it out there. It's a real thing. And, you know, something that I've really worked on the past couple of years is like starting to like really dig deep within myself and realize like, okay, why am I judging somebody and classifying them as a bad person, right? Just because their reality doesn't look like mine, if that makes sense. You know, people do make mistakes, and sometimes people make bad mistakes, right? But it's not my job to take their inventory and tell them about themselves or think that they need to be a certain way, right? I mean, that's exhausting. Like, the only thing that's my responsibility is me focusing on Ashley and how Ashley can impact my life, but also the lives of others in a positive way. And if that is truly my goal, how is that aligning with judging X, Y, and Z, right? I mean, listen, taking piano lessons, I'll tell you this right now. I took piano lessons as a child. And in September, my birthday is September 2nd, my husband was knocking on my office door, and it was so annoying I wanted to kill him because people kind of just walk in and out of my office. Sometimes they'd be like, shut that door. But he's going, knock, knock, knock. And I'm like, who's that? Like, I'm like, come in. I'm on the phone, you know, knock, knock, knock. I'm like, what the hell? Like, just open up the fucking door. You know, like all that unspiritual stuff is coming out of my mouth. And finally, I was like ramping and raving. I swear, I was stomping my feet to the door because I was so frustrated. I had no idea it was him. And on the other side of the door was this little package, and it was wrapped in piano music notes. And it was really sweet. And I opened it, and of course, I started crying. And he bought me lessons. And the teacher wrote out, like, on a postcard, "Hi, Ashley, your husband contacted me to start you on your journey again to, you know, start playing piano again." And, you know, and I did that. And I took lessons every week. I still take lessons. And I had a recital in December. And, like, I had people come out and support me. And I was, like, the only adult there, okay? I'm just going to throw it out there. I took, literally, there was, like, high school. There was a 5-year-old, okay, that was at that recital. But you know what? I kicked ass at that recital. Yeah. And it was fun, and it was esteemable, and it, you know, and it made me feel good and proud of myself. And, you know, again, something that I never would have thought, or maybe I didn't never think, but I never thought to revisit, if that makes sense, has changed me.
Yeah.
You know, and I love it. It's the high you get from running, you know, and I know that high, by the way. I wanted to tell you that. I feel that when I'm playing.
How old were you when you stopped playing?
When drugs came in, 14.
14?
Mm-hmm.
But you thoroughly were like invested in it up until that point. Mm-hmm. It was something that you were passionate about.
For sure.
Something that provided a lot for you as a young girl.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge believer in like revisiting the things that you were interested in, passionate about before your substance use. I was talking tonight about the stupid radio show, right? Like that's how this.
It's not stupid.
I know it's filthy. You should have heard it. You should have heard it this morning. I still listen, by the way. I still listen every day. My little Google Home system kicks on.
Yes, I have one of those
every morning at 7 a.m. Oh my gosh,
Good morning.
The thing, yeah. No, the show at 6 a.m. the show starts. It's just on. But that's how this thing happened. Is I was talking to you about my challenges in school and my challenges with the things that I was learning in class not aligning with what I was seeing in the real world, and that created a real serious internal conflict. And I wanted to drop out. I was like contemplating dropping out of school before I made any irrational moves. It's like, all right, Steve, step back. Let's reevaluate this situation. And I began to think about, I was like, what if you could do anything in the world, if you could pick anything in the world, you could go back in time and start over the 12-year-old, 13-year-old Steve. And money wasn't an option. It didn't matter, any of that stuff. What would you do? And that's how this happened, you know? So like revisiting those things, like, how do you define success? How do you define success? Like, is it the paycheck that you get every 2 weeks? Is it the happy family at home? Like, what is it in your life? Because it's different for everybody. What is it in your life that drives you, right? Like, what is it that fulfills you in a way that the chaos out here doesn't? Playing piano, like that's huge.
That definition has changed so many times in recovery for me, you know, and I think that life lessons come along with that. You know, I used to think that I had to make all this money to be happy, and then, you know, I did have a decent career making a lot of money, and I was miserable, you know?
There, yeah.
So, you know, I had to take a step back and realize, like, okay, what's important to me, first of all? What are my values? What do I like to do? What does Ashley like to do? what's fun, right?
It's all new.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
And you know, and I do believe, and I was talking to somebody earlier about this, you know, when it comes to recovery, you know, you don't have to know who you were before drugs and alcohol. Shoot, you don't even have to pay attention to who you were when drugs and alcohol played a part. You can become whoever you want to be in recovery. You can reinvent yourself, right? For me, I love playing softball. I love sports, and I still love those things, right? Actually, you can see my wrist is a little blue. I went to the batting cages on Friday, and I hit some balls, and I'm not going to lie, I was a little stressed after work, and I was like, you know what? I'm going in the faster one. And my husband was like, you might want to start slow. And I was like, excuse me? Do you know who I am? I was like, I don't need to start slow. I played baseball for 7 years, and, all this high, mighty crap, okay? And
So where do we stand with a Mountain View co-ed softball team?
I know. That would be so cool. That would be cool. I'm down. I mean,
a
shoot.
list of people that would sign up to play on that team ASAP.
That would be cool. I swear, if there really is people interested, please get in touch with me, because I'm about that.
I got a hand at the end of the table.
I'm about that.
Lauren Garvey, Janae.
Yeah.
Y'all hit us up. Jay Cannon, let's get a softball
right.
team going. Coop, come on, man. Let's go.
Coop. Good people, everyone you named.
Yeah, the list goes on and on and on, man. The list goes on and on and on. Parenting, right? The wild, fun adventure of parenting. How old is your oldest son?
13.
13.
Mm-hmm.
So he was around for some of the chaos.
He was.
How have you, being a person in long-term recovery, learned to parent, and what was that like? Like, how did you learn to, because again, back to some of that balance, you go from the chaos to finding recovery, to putting your recovery first and going into the rooms and stuff like that. How did you develop the skill to be a present parent and be someone that's gonna because it's hard.
It is hard.
You go from almost the extremes, and then wanting to protect your son from all of the things that you experienced. And so how do you, again, balance? How do you find that balance in creating that relationship with what is now a young man?
Yep,
right?
He is.
And how do you approach it in a way where he's going to be receptive to some of the harsh experiences that life has out there? What's that like? How do you learn it? I need to know.
Well, I do want to speak to the fact that when I had Zachary, Zachary's my oldest son, and he is just a brilliant, beautiful boy. Let me just tell you that. He's actually way smarter than I am today. He's brilliant. And I know a lot of people say that about their kids, but he truly is. And it's almost kind of scary in a way, because he was unlocking parental controls at 5 years old. I'm just going to be honest with you.
So there's no getting ahead of him on this
Nope.
stuff.
He's way ahead of my time. He asked me to help him with some math stuff one time when I was around him, and I didn't even know what I was looking at.
They do it. No, we talked about this in our school, because we have a lot of students that are parents. They do it totally different than we did it.
Oh my gosh.
In our day.
So crazy. His school literally gives him a Mac computer to take home. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, first of all, I had him very young. I was 15 when I got pregnant, and he was 2 weeks late, so I can thankfully say I had him at 16. His birthday is 6 days after my birthday. And, at that time when he was born, and, I didn't realize it, but I just didn't have the motherly instincts that I have today. And that's me being raw and vulnerable and honest, I didn't start up with the drugs hardcore until he was a couple years old. And, we all know that when drugs come first, everything else comes last. And, thankfully I did get clean while he was still fairly young. And his understanding is that, I used to drink alcohol, and now I help people get off of it. And to me, that's a blessing. And he loves to introduce me as, oh, this is my mom. She had me when she was 16. And I'm like, can you not do that, please? Like, hi.
Welcome to the PTA
oh
meeting.
my
Right?
gosh, it's hilarious. But you know, he really has grown into just a wonderful, wonderful young man. That being said, we have also experienced some super challenging things with him. He has done some pretty crazy things that are just scary smart and manipulative. And, you know, I do believe that he has a lot of the addictive tendencies as I do. However, I also believe that he can use them for the greater good. And he doesn't have to turn to drugs and alcohol. And by, you know, the grace of God, he has not done that. And what scares me really in today's world is this vape crap, is the, you know, the pictures that people post on social media of what a perfect life looks like and what, you know, kids are supposed to look like. And, you know, it's all about for that age group, social acceptability, right? It was for me. You know, that's one of the main reasons why I ended up turning to drugs and alcohol, because I didn't know where I belonged, and I found somebody who accepted me. And when I was high, I could be anyone I wanted to be, right? So it's challenging, man. But I love him. You know, he is, you know, both of my kids are the better part of me. You know, they bring out an Ashley that wants to be a better person in this world. I constantly think about, I mean, from every picture that I post, okay, I'm going to go there because I'm going to go there. I think about what my children would think if I was posting that and they saw me post it.
One day they will see
Yeah,
it
they will, for sure.
in this world that we live in now.
I mean, am I cussing on a video with my fingers out and acting all cool, and that's the role model that I'm reflecting for my children? Can I do that at home when I'm not around them? Of course I can, because I have free will, right? But that's not the person that I'm going to portray around my kids, because guess what? I don't want my kids to grow up like that. And I'm just being honest. I want them, they're innocent right now, especially my 3-year-old. He is an innocent little loving boy. He loves Jesus. It's the craziest thing in the world. He literally wakes up every morning. He has to pray before he eats. He does this to me. Okay. I just want to be clear. He taught me this. Every day it's, I want to go see Jesus. And we go into church today. I literally take him to celebrate recovery on Thursdays, and then I take him to church on Sunday. And that's just not enough for that kid. He has to have more church. Like, it's a crazy, I mean, it's really awesome because it's something that was self-taught for him. And I know, don't get me wrong, that I'm influencing him, right? Because wherever I take him, he's learning. And 3 years old, they pay attention. And I learned that from my older son. You know, trust me, he knows how to call me out on my stuff too. Yeah. That one does. But, you know, the blessing is that I can learn from some of the mistakes that I made with my older son, and I don't have to make the same ones for Connor and for, you know, any other children that I bring into this world, God willing. So
what about like some of the conversations with the older one about prevention and things like that? Like, how do you approach it in a way that he can hear you?
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. My son is not very open about his emotions. He tends to shut down a lot.
Which is totally common for somebody that age, dude.
He's a 13-year-old young male. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to build that rapport. You know, you have to, for me, my approach is I try to let him know that I'm here for him no matter what. You know, that I won't judge him, that I love him, but that he has to be honest. And he does. He's 13. He lies, you know. And if he doesn't get what he wants from me, he goes to my mom, he goes to my stepdad, he goes to my stepsister until somebody gives him what he wants. But it's hard. You know, I think the biggest and most important thing in dealing with your children, especially with young teens, is to have that open communication and to let them know, you know, I'm not always going to be the disciplinary parent. Like, sometimes I just need to hear you and I need to listen. And even if I want to lash out and tell you, like, you can't do that, it's going to lead to this and that, sometimes I just need to hear where they're at and let them know that, like, it's safe to talk to me. Because what's scary is when they don't talk to you and they continue to go down that path, and then you don't know what's going on in their life. You know, they feel like they have to hide everything from you, and then one secret leads to another. And, you know, I just pray that doesn't happen, but ultimately, you know, it's not in my hands. Yeah, it's not in my hands.
And then in this day and age with social media and those things, like the influence and the appearance that's presented there can be a very slippery slope for the development of a young man, right? And how do we grow up to treat women when every person on Instagram is showing their ass off for a million likes? How do I know what's respectable when every person that's showing their tits on Instagram has 10 million followers?
Yep.
And a young 13-year-old man learns that that's how we look at women,
Yep.
you know, objectify them in a way like that. Like, it's fucking scary, dude.
It is
Like,
scary. And the whole, you know, and for women, you know, because I can speak from the woman's side of it is, you know, body dysmorphia and body image and, you know, feeling like you have to have your hair a certain way and you have to have, you know, you have to wear a bikini, right? And you have to wear like almost nothing to be seen. And, you know, for somebody personally, myself, you know, who struggled with weight gain and weight loss and body dysmorphia, you know, that is super impactful for teenagers and not just women, men too.
Yeah.
You know, they're seeing these superstars that are super skinny, cut up, skateboarding, you know, or maybe their friends are getting more attention than the other one and more likes, and all of a sudden they have to look like them, you know. It's truly scary. It is. You know, there's always a story behind every picture. And, you know, I really try to let people know that, because you might have a girl who looks amazing in a mirror and, you know, from the outside perspective is happy in all her pictures and looks so good. But you know what? She might be struggling with suicidal thoughts because she can barely eat because she's worried that if she gains 1 little pound, somebody will notice and she won't have any followers anymore. I mean, seriously, how deep does that go? How deep does that thinking process go? And how do you grow from that, right? Like, how do you get out of that when the world, society is pushing towards that? I mean, the Snapchat filters with the eyes, right? And the pretty, and don't get me wrong, like, I've used them, you know. I'm just keeping it real. You know, but, and then also like the distortions too. I mean, they do make fun of, you know, visual things too. And I mean, some of them are funny because that's our human nature. We laugh, but I mean, it's also kind of not funny, right? Because it's making fun of somebody's face looking weird. And, you know, I think it just goes back to judgments.
Yeah.
It just goes back to that. And I think that the way that you solve that, to be honest with you, is to monitor. And, you know, you can't take everything away from the kids because it's there, but you can, you know, open up some time frames and say, okay, look, like, if you want to use your phone, that's fine. But, you know, you're going to use it between 8 and 10 o'clock. There's no reason why you should have a phone at midnight, taking selfies, sending it to your friends.
Turn it in at
right.
the end of the night. Mom's going to hold it till the morning.
Why not?
That sort of thing.
And monitor it, you know, and let them know, let your child know, like, communicate that to them and say, listen, like, I'm going to get you this phone. If you set that in the beginning, they're not going to expect anything different.
And then what do you do when you find something?
Well, what do I do?
I mean, it's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? At some point, it's going to happen. And so, like, how do you handle that in a way that consequences will be present? However, you're not like betraying their trust or not losing their trust, and that you still have that open form of communication.
I mean, you just said it. You talk to them about it, depending on what you find, right? You explain to them why, you know, it could be good or could not be good, right? Like, what it leads to, what your concerns are, you know, communicate. And honestly, your children should be able to do that for you too.
Yeah.
So, like, if I'm out there, let's say I go to a restaurant and, you know, the waiter doesn't bring me my food in time and I'm cussing at the waiter. Like, my child should be able to say, Mom, like, I really don't like that you do that because it makes me feel this way, right? And it's embarrassing, and I appreciate it if you don't do it again, you know, and be able to communicate what it does to them, because every action has a consequence, whether it's positive or negative.
Damn straight.
Everything.
Does your 3-year-old play on the phone yet?
He doesn't really play on the phone. We do allow him occasionally to use YouTube Kids, but it's literally a maximum of an hour a day. I know that sounds like a lot, but you're talking about increments of 20 minutes. And maybe he uses it like for 20 of them a day.
Yeah. That wasn't a judgmental question.
Yeah.
That's like, because I don't know
Yeah.
what the appropriate
Well, he sees us on our phone.
response is. Yeah. I don't
He
know.
sees us on our phone. So, but we try not to encourage that, to be honest with you. He's got a lot of toys. We have a little bit of a backyard. We just got him like this big car for his birthday. And, I'm trying to teach him other things like how to clean up. I know that sounds silly, but he's 3 years old. We got to get him ready.
Practical.
Yeah.
Very practical.
I'm trying to teach him piano. He's learning at a very slow pace. But just some cool things that I can give to him. I try to educate him on some knowledge. And, sometimes my husband is like, he's 3 years old. I'm like, but you know what? It worked on my older son. Look at Zach. He's brilliant. And Connor loves to learn. And he likes to take care of his dog. He feeds his dog. His dog is 100 pounds.
Wow.
He's a huge, massive dog that knocks him over, but Connor feeds him. And Connor's just like an innocent soul. He likes to be outside with nature, with butterflies, with animals. He loves trucks. If you put him with some trucks, it's a happy day for Connor. So.
Beautiful. What's next for Mountain View?
Oh, what's next for Mountain View?
Yeah, what's on the horizon?
Well, lots of great things. Actually, we just brought on another new therapist. And I love our program because it's extremely dynamic. We have people who specialize in a lot of different areas. And we recently added some Qigong. Do you know about Qigong? Yeah. I love Lauren. She's great. So, we are hoping to continue to grow. We had somewhat of a slow start. We worked very diligently on building the program and building our reputation because it's so important. Bottom line is if we're taking, and I call it a pact because it really is, like if we're taking a pact to treat a client, we're literally treating them at their most vulnerable time, right? People come into treatment with all kinds of hurts, hang-ups, struggles, right? It's not just, bottom line is really not about the drugs and alcohol, right?
Correct.
Once they put them down, like we need to do our part and our pact, right? Our due diligence to treat them and address the trauma, address the underlying issues driving the addiction. And, the exciting part is this summer, we really want to focus on a lot more outdoorsy stuff, do some overnight camping. We do some bonfires. We do some groups where we burn some emotions and burn some other stuff. And just really try to incorporate a lot of activity stuff because it's so important. It's like you said, you need to treat the physical component too. We recently brought on a guy who's a chef, and
yeah, I saw
oh
all
my
the
gosh,
food pictures.
They're so good. Honestly, and I know people are probably listening that are probably going to be like, Ashley, what? But I have to try his food like almost every time he makes it.
Yeah.
That's what's going on here.
Sometimes I'll be like scrolling and I'll see the food before I see the post, like before reading the words and stuff. And I'm like, my mind's instantly like, what restaurant is that?
Yeah.
Like, where is this place? And then I start reading it and I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, man, they got it going on.
It's great because we have an RN there full time, which is different than a lot of places. We also, of course, have our medical director, but the RN there, Melissa, she teaches them a lot about health and nutrition. Yeah. And one of the goals in bringing somebody in to cook was to teach them more about some like different kinds of things they can cook, right? Like the other day, she brought in some black garlic. I never even saw black garlic before.
Not familiar.
And then what else did she bring? Some kind of onion that was a green onion. It looked like green onions, but it was called something else. Do you remember?
Was it a ramp?
It was a ramp.
Dug around here?
Yeah, see, I'm not from the South.
Those are like delicious.
They were really good.
Did you try it? Did you try it?
You tried the black garlic though, right? Yeah, it was good. So, it's just cool. And then after, we went on a hike. We took a walk. We didn't go on a hike that day. But just, again, the physical component, letting people know, especially like when they're stressed out and they don't have a lot of coping skills, that, there's other ways that you can get outside of yourself. You don't always have to reach not only for something, but someone, right? Sometimes you can find that internal solution and, and get out of your own way. And Mountain View, the goal, we don't want to be large. But we, of course, do want to grow, and we want to help save as many lives as possible. That's always going to be the goal.
That's beautiful. I've heard nothing but wonderful things.
Thank you.
Yeah, everybody I've met, from your husband, Jay, Cooper, everybody that I've met over there has just been phenomenal. So
Awesome. Yeah.
I appreciate you coming over.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
How can anybody get in touch with you? You got an email, Facebook, Twitter,
Yes.
Instagram. Where do they find you? How do they connect?
Yes. So my Facebook is Ashley Meehan.
Spell that.
It's ASHLEY, and then it's M as in Michael, double E, H as in Harry, A like Apple, N like Nancy. And you can always get in touch with me through Mountain View too. There's a lot of advertisement that's out there for Mountain View, so if you come across it, you're more than welcome to reach out via Messenger, phone, whatever. I see them all. And my personal email is it's a little different, but it's ashley.campbell, CAMPBELL 08 @yahoo.com. But if anybody wants to chat, I'm always available.
Kick ass. Ashley, you're a badass. I totally enjoyed this conversation.
Cool. Me too.
We'll do it again sometime.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Y'all have a good night. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye. Good night.